Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation. My name is Izzy Azeri, and I'm the Vice President of Corporate and Business Development for Acronis. And I'm responsible for our technology ecosystem within our industry. And in addition to working with technology partners, I also spend a lot of time with customers as well as channel partners in understanding what are the key requirements and key technologies impacting backup and disaster recovery in our customer environments today, and help translate that feedback into our product strategy. And that's what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about today in terms of how to protect systems and applications in physical, virtual, and cloud-based environments. A couple of housekeeping things just to start out. I will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so feel free to hold your questions until the end. I'll be able to answer as many questions as we have time for, and then you can also come to our booth to answer further questions as well. Secondly, we've dropped off some pamphlets on each one of your seats. The first one is a free tool we actually offer called Drive Monitor. It helps you get a lot of value out of monitoring your disk drives and understand when they're going to fail. And the second handout was actually a promotion for an iPad giveaway that we're having at our booth, as well as a couple of demos we're going to be doing in our booth both tonight as well as throughout the next couple of days here at VMworld. So with that, let me start the presentation so you guys can all go to the Solutions Exchange after this and drink your heart away all night long. Okay, so some of the things I'm going to cover today. First of all, what are the market drivers driving demand for backup and disaster recovery software across physical, virtual, and cloud-based environments? What's driving demand specifically for software solutions to provide backup capabilities and protection capabilities for those environments? We'll talk about that. Secondly, what are the specific challenges that customers see when they deploy backup and disaster recovery software within those environments? And also, what are some requirements that customers should consider out of a software-based solution to address those challenges? I'll also spend time talking about some of the planning requirements customers should consider as they plan their business continuity and DR solutions. And lastly, we'll talk about the optimal solution for backup and disaster recovery across physical, virtual, and cloud-based infrastructure. First of all, from a demand perspective, there's a lot of different things driving demand for backup and disaster recovery software. And I'm sure many of you are seeing these challenges and seeing these demand drivers within your environments today. First of all, data availability and recovery time objectives are becoming more and more stringent. As businesses run critical IT applications that drive the growth and drive the happiness of customers and the success of their businesses, they're relying on these critical applications being up. So making sure these applications are protected and have the right recovery time objectives from a customer perspective is critically important. And having a backup and disaster recovery application that can drive those RTOs is even more important. There's new technologies also impacting customers' environments, including cloud computing, which is emerging as a new medium for not only data storage, but also business continuity. And also technologies like virtualization, which have become very popular in transforming a data center, which was once a physical-based data center or desktop environment, to something that's more flexible and cost-effective by using virtualization. There's compliance mandates based on the different environments that you're in. If you're in the, for example, pharmaceutical or biotech or healthcare industry, there's different compliance requirements you may have to make sure you're protecting customer information in the right way. Same goes for financial services, same goes for the legal industry as well. And that's driving demand for backup software to address those compliance mandates. And as we all know, data storage is becoming more and more robust. There's more and more endpoint devices which are creating digitized data, and many of the old text-based files that people have had are being converted to digitized data. So storing this information and then protecting it and finding an optimal solution that not only allows you to digitize all of this, but protect it in a much more efficient manner by using technologies like deduplication and compression is important. And lastly, while doing all of these things from a business perspective, it's important for businesses to make sure they're doing it under the tight and stringent budgets that they have today. Oftentimes, these budgets are decreasing year after year. So finding a very affordable solution that leverages the storage resources you have and protects those resources is very important. As these market drivers are driving demand for backup software, there's also complexities that customers run into. Complexities based on the specific environments that customers have, not only today, but as they grow their businesses. This user interface screen right here is actually the user interface for creating a backup plan with our Acronis Backup and Recovery 10 software product. And this backup plan allows you to create backup policies for all the different systems and different applications you have in your environment. And I'll talk through some of the complexities that customers have. For example, systems. Not only is data being backed up from a server perspective, but also workstations, laptops, netbooks, all the different devices that employees are bringing into the data center and storing edge information in on those devices. So it's important to make sure those devices are protected. Locations. There's different locations that these devices reside in. If they're in the data center, maybe you can use your traditional backup software to make sure those devices are backed up. If they're at remote office, branch office environments, it's important to make sure you have the specific network optimization tools to back those up. You may have mobile workers, different geographies based on where your business is, and making sure you're able to back systems up in those different geographies. Recovery granularity. This is becoming more and more of an issue for customers. Historically, file-based backup solutions were good enough and allowed you to recover in a period of time which was okay for your business to continue going. But with the dawn of virtualization, now you need applications that allow you to recover the virtual machine or even files within that virtual machine for much more granular access, so you're not recovering the whole system. As well as file-based backup, there's also image-based backup, which has gotten momentum over the last couple of years. And with image-based backups, you can actually recover bare metal. And that recovery time is much faster than a traditional file-based approach. So there's lots of different recovery granularity approaches. And lastly, there's also applications. So perhaps not only do you want to recover a specific file, but you want to recover a specific email from that application. So it's important to make sure you address all those different complexities from a recovery granularity perspective. Cloud. Obviously, we see the clouds behind us. We see cloud as a major driver for this event for VMworld 2010. But understanding how you leverage cloud, both from a private cloud perspective and a public cloud perspective, is important. So you should really spend time, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The different environments that you have. Traditionally, physical-based data centers have been in existence, as well as physical desktop environments. But with virtualization, customers are virtualizing their data centers and are looking for applications that protect not only the physical infrastructure, but also the virtualized infrastructure. And not only protecting these infrastructures using one management console, but being able to do that across different hypervisors. You may have different hypervisors in your data center versus having different hypervisors at, for example, test and dev facilities for cost purposes or ease of use purposes. So you should really look for an application that addresses those. And lastly, recovery location. Many customers have one data center, and they need to recover back to that physical data center when they need to recover. But also, with the dawn of virtualization over the past 10 years, you can recover to different virtualized data centers. So making sure you have the flexibility to back up and recover to virtual, or even recover in the cloud. We'll talk about some of the solutions that address these complexities for customers. The next couple of slides, I'm going to drill a little bit deeper into each one of these and talk about what some of the requirements are from a planning perspective. Well, on the system side, as we highlighted, there's lots of different systems in an IT environment. Making sure you have one application that backs up and protects all the different systems is critically important, because there's typically one IT admin that's supporting the backup policies for servers, for workstations, for mobile devices. So making sure you have one application to protect all those devices is critical. But not only is it critical to make sure you have one application to back up and protect those devices, but you should make sure that application is optimized for the specific devices that you have. For example, if you have specific netbooks that don't have a lot of CPU, but you want to back those up, you want to make sure you have an application that's optimized for those devices, both from a hardware perspective and conversely from a software perspective. Making sure that the application you have is optimized for the software or operating system or applications on those devices. And lastly, having that application be centrally managed. So you don't need to go to different consoles, different dashboards to manage, for example, your mobile workers versus your Exchange application. Being able to do that from one single console is important because it really reduces the TCO of your backup solution. Thinking about the different locations you're backing up to. Obviously, data centers are popular from a backup and DR perspective because typically your most critical applications are running there. So those systems are typically always protected. But you may have mobile workers, workers in remote offices, and you should invest in a solution that's optimized for the network bandwidth requirements that those customers may or may not have. So being able to do things like compression, bandwidth throttling, and deduplication when you're backing up from the edge to the core is very, very important. And that should be a baseline for the different application that you invest in if you do have remote offices or mobile workers. Secondly, supporting the different languages you may need. A lot of businesses these days are investing in manufacturing outside of the U.S., are investing in growth outside of the U.S., and these remote sites often have different IT admins for those sites, but you want to make sure they're centrally managed as well. So investing in an application that perhaps is localized for the specific country you're moving into, but at the same time has central management capabilities where you as a data center operator or a backup operator in the U.S. can operate them is important. And lastly, having the ability to back up to the different targets that may be at these different sites. Having the ability to back up to SAN, to NAS, to tape, depending on what the options are from a backup perspective, and being able to make sure you can do that with one single application. So again, it's very, very important to be able to do this seamlessly across the different environments you're in. Talking about environments, physical-based data centers are very popular, but are now being transformed into virtualized data centers. So being able to address that with one single management console from a backup perspective is very important. ESG did a survey about a year ago in trying to understand how many backup applications people typically have in their virtual infrastructure. And over 80% of the respondents actually said that they had two applications, one for their physical infrastructure, one for their virtual infrastructure. And over 90% of those respondents said they would like to have one application. It just reduces complexity. So not only do you need an application, and I know this is a little bit of an eye chart, that allows you to manage the backup policies for physical and virtual from one console, but is very deep in terms of the functionality it provides for the specific environment. So from a physical perspective, making sure that backup application that you have provides scalability from single machines to thousands of machines, making sure it has key capabilities like deduplication built in, making sure it has backup reporting built into it so you can report on what's happening in your physical-based infrastructure. And lastly, security capabilities built into it. So your data is encrypted at rest when you want it to be encrypted, and it's also encrypted in the backup process if it's happening over the WAN when you want that to be encrypted as well. And there's other features from a virtualization perspective you should look for in that single solution, in addition to the physical capabilities it has. First of all, agentless backup is a critical requirement of a backup application for virtualized infrastructure. It's okay to put agents on virtual machines, and it's okay to do a backup process that way, but as your virtual infrastructure grows, it becomes cumbersome. It's more cost-effective to have an agentless approach where you literally run an agent or a virtual appliance on that host and forget about the rest. In addition, there's other capabilities like file-level recovery from a virtual machine versus just an image-based recovery of that full VM. File-based recovery will allow you to get very granular in terms of getting the information you want as opposed to recovering the whole system, which may take more time than you expected to take. And having deduplication built in to a virtualization backup product is critical as well. As we know, many of these files, these VMDKs, have common data across them, and being able to deduplicate all that information across a host and all the virtual machines on that host is very important. So you not only save on the back-end storage, so you're saving money that way, but you're also saving money on bandwidth and not sending everything over the network. Supporting all the different hypervisors is also important. There's thousands of customers in the industry that leverage different hypervisors for different use cases. So having the flexibility with your backup application to back up different types of hypervisors you may invest in, not only today, but in the future, based on a certain hypervisor having specific functionality you may want, is important in your backup application. And also having migration capabilities built in. Oftentimes, migration is synonymous with backup because from a recovery perspective, you may want to migrate to a different system, a different hypervisor. So having that migration capability built in is important. And not only migration from a physical to virtual perspective, but also between hypervisors and also back to physical if you have problems in your virtualized infrastructure and you want to move back. And lastly, there's different things that you can do with virtualization when it comes to backup and DR. There's power that it brings in terms of flexibility, in terms of migration, in terms of quick recovery capabilities. Acronis has developed a feature called Instant Recovery, which leverages virtualization for innovative backup techniques on the recovery time side. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So it's not only important to make sure you're leveraging backup and DR, protecting those environments, but you're using virtualization to the power it really holds for your IT environment. Cloud. Cloud is typically used today from a backup repository perspective. Companies like Amazon are making a lot of money off of this. Other large companies are making money with file-based backup as well. But you can also use cloud for compute, which is something VMware is spending a lot of time in. And so thinking about how you leverage cloud from a backup and DR perspective, whether it's just for storage or whether it's for storage and compute, is very important. But again, just like with virtualized infrastructure, you want to make sure that you're using an application that allows you to do backup and recovery across physical and virtual from one application, but also for cloud from that same application. Going to multiple different applications to leverage different use cases becomes cumbersome, becomes very costly for customers, and requires more training and more investment. So looking for one application that does these things is very important. Recovery granularity. Based on the different objectives that you have from a recovery time perspective, there's different granularity you may want to recover to. If you have a longer recovery time objective, maybe you use file-based backup. But with image-based backups and physical infrastructure, you can actually recover much more quickly because you're recovering everything back down to the bare metal. But again, as we had talked about, you may want file-level recovery because you don't need to recover the full system. So having the ability to do one backup and do a bare metal recovery if that's what you're looking for, or do a file-based recovery if that's what you're looking for, is much more efficient than doing two backups for the same function. And the same thing when it comes to virtual machines. Being able to do image-based backups and recoveries of virtual machines, but also file-based recoveries of them is very, very important. So you should have the same expectations for backup and DR across physical and virtualized infrastructure. And you also would like application-level granularity if you want to get down to application-level recovery for specific apps that you have in your environment. Recovery locations. Historically, people have just recovered to the same hardware that they've had. But with different types of hardware out there, with site disasters, with hard drives going in PCs, not being able to recover to those PCs, you may want to recover to different types of hardware. Having the ability to recover to dissimilar hardware should be a critical requirement you have because not all data centers are the same, not all hardware is the same. But not only recovering to physical hardware or dissimilar physical hardware, but also recovering to virtual machines. So doing a physical backup of a server and not necessarily recovering to another physical server, but recovering to a virtual machine. So you have the flexibility as your virtualization infrastructure grows, as your recovery times become more stringent, that you can recover to virtual infrastructure. And lastly, not only recovering to physical or virtual infrastructure, but the ultimate DR capability, which is recovering in the cloud. Not having to invest in a secondary data center for recovery purposes and renting space and recovering in the cloud so you can get up and going very quickly, and then as your site comes back, being able to recover that information back locally to that local site you may have. So again, lots of different challenges, but there are critical requirements that you should invest in your backup solution. So what do you do from a planning perspective? What should a customer do, and what should they take into consideration as they plan for their backup and DR scenarios across physical, virtual, and cloud? Well, first of all, obviously understand what your environment looks like today, but also what your environment's going to be in the next couple of years. Do you expect to hire mobile workers and have mobile workers have laptops, iPads, what have you, and you want that information protected? Do you plan to move into new geographies of the world where you need your backup application to span both your local data center and your remote data centers? You should really think about and plan these requirements out so you invest in a solution that you can use for the next couple of years, not necessarily for the next couple of quarters. Secondly, identify and plan your RTO, your recovery time objectives, and your recovery point objectives. Different applications may have different critical needs for your business. For example, if your web server went down, your website went down, and you're an internet purchasing company, your business may be out of business for a long time. Whereas Exchange and SQL may be less important. So really figure out which applications are most important, group them, and then use policy-based management to set recovery time objectives for those applications, and make sure the investment that you make in a backup application allows you to do that. Decide how you want to leverage key technologies like virtualization and cloud in your business. These technologies not only create complexity for you, but you can leverage them. Leverage cloud for disaster recovery in the cloud. Leverage virtualization for mobility and flexibility. So you should really leverage a backup application that uses these technologies instead of just protecting against them. And lastly, after you've done all that, research all the alternatives out there. There's hundreds of backup products on the market that have very deep functionality, very specific functionality, but they also have some limitations, and you should really figure out if those limitations are going to impact your environment and your planning. But you should also be agile enough to consider new applications, new backup applications that you may not have considered before, and how these applications can meld into your environment, not necessarily from a displacement perspective, displacing what you have, but help you build in terms of that journey from a backup and DR perspective across physical, virtual, and cloud. On the next couple of slides, I'm going to spend time talking about what this optimal solution could look like. We at Acronis have spent about a decade's worth of time understanding customers' environments for backup and disaster recovery and designing a solution that hits the requirements that customers have. We've not only spent a lot of time from an investment perspective here, both development and strategy, but we've done this all organically. We've never made one technology acquisition to build these components that you'll see here. This is all organically developed, which means it's completely integrated. So from the first step perspective, it's important to make sure you protect your physical assets, and protecting them by the ability to do image-based backups, which allows you to do very quick recoveries. Not only should you be able to recover bare metal, but you should be able to recover specific files from that physical backup application. And the storage in the back end could be the storage that you choose. It could be tape for archiving purposes. It could be disk based on your recovery time objectives. It could be a network share based on how much data you have. Or it could be even your laptop, a secure zone on your laptop. Really figuring out what are the systems you want to protect, where do you want to protect them to for physical backup. Secondly, having the same expectations for virtualized backup. The system should be able to back up virtual machines on an image basis, which many applications do today, but also be able to do that agentlessly and also be able to do file-based recoveries. So having the ability to do local backup of physical and virtual, one solution, and the ability to migrate between the two. It's not all the time that you have to migrate back to physical, but you may have to do that once in a while, so having the option to do that is very, very positive. And then obviously, using this application to move from physical to virtual is important as well as you build your data center and as you build the different applications you may have and what those applications will run on, whether they're physical or virtualized infrastructure. And the ability to migrate is important not only for data protection purposes, but it's also important for flexibility. You may not always have a physical data center to recover to, so you may want to lease space in the cloud that's running virtual infrastructure, or you have a different data center that's virtualized. And on the cloud side, having the same expectations that you have used for years from a backup and recovery perspective, whether it's file backup or image backup, is important. But having the same expectations in the cloud is much more important. The optimal solution for backup and disaster recovery to the cloud should not only be files and folders, which many companies are doing today, but also full system images. Being able to do disaster recovery from the cloud so you can recover to any hardware anywhere in the world that's internet connected. Just imagine if you're using an online backup repository for a secondary data center, and your system goes down, and you're using an old application, a custom application, that's not available anymore. Well, your files and folders are available, but you can't recover them because the application doesn't exist, and you can't find that hardware anymore. So it's important not only to have file-based backup to the cloud, but system image-based backup to the cloud. And having this be a secure and turnkey cloud is important. Stitching together this type of environment, this type of infrastructure is difficult. There's many different vendors you can go to, but having a very secure and turnkey solution from a single vendor is optimal. And lastly, doing the same backups that you were doing with virtual infrastructure to the cloud agentlessly is important as well. Again, have the same expectations that you had from a local backup perspective from a cloud backup. That is what you should require. That's the optimal solution you've already invested in for virtualization backup. So why not have the same expectations to the cloud? So being able to back up virtual machine images to the cloud and then being able to recover those from the cloud, either at the VM level or the file level, is the optimal solution. And this solution was designed by us for over 10 years, and this solution is the basis for our flagship product, Acronis Backup and Recovery 10, which allows for backup across physical, virtual, and cloud-based infrastructure. Let me spend a little bit of time talking about this product. This product family is in version 10 right now, and it's our flagship solution that we released to the market last July. It has protection for servers and workstations on the physical side. It has protection for virtualized infrastructure from a virtualization perspective, and it has protection for cloud-based infrastructure, or what we call online. And there's also different partner-based solutions and certifications that we've developed as part of this family of products as well. The server and workstation family of products has one centralized dashboard, which allows you to manage all of the policies and the topology for all of your systems. And this supports both Windows and Linux environments. It has the scalability to be able to back up single machines, which we have customers doing today, all the way up to thousands of machines in your environment. In fact, we have a very, very large company out of the UK that just invested in us to protect 20,000 workstations using this backup application. It also has the ability to do universal restore, which is our naming for being able to recover to different hardware, not the same hardware you backed up from. So again, not forcing your customer to purchase the same exact hardware to recover the system or recover the applications that they had. This also has application support through specific add-ons that we've developed. Today, we support the Microsoft family of applications, including Exchange and SQL. And it also has deduplication built in. And the way that we're offering deduplication with this family of products is very flexible from a customer perspective. You can invest into software-based deduplication capability and into a source or target-based dedupe or file or block. Depending on what your requirements are, whether it's network bandwidth or being able to back up very quickly, we offer the flexibility through our deduplication add-on. And there's reporting built in as well. We've built a reporting database leveraging SQL in the back end, which has canned reports, and those reports can be emailed to you telling you how many successful backups you've had, how long your backup process took, different alerts that you can set, how much storage space you have left in the back end. You can also develop canned reports if you want to get more granular. And we also offer the ability, if you have a reporting product like Crystal Reports or something, we expose the database to you so you can report and query against that database. And lastly, it has backup to lots of different targets out there, whether it's tape or disk or a network share or an FTP location. You can use this product to back up to all those different locations with one single product. There's also a Virtualization Optimized product within this family as well. It's from the same management console that you manage your physical systems from, you manage your virtualized infrastructure. It's an agentless backup approach leveraging the VMware vStorage APIs. And we are VMware Ready certified as well. We also support VCB, but as Asmir talked about earlier today, VCB is going away with the next version of ESX after 4.1. So the vStorage APIs will be what's used from a backup perspective. Deduplication is completely built in, so you can deduplicate across all the VMs on a host, which typically have a lot of common data, and be able to back up just the specific information that's unique to each of those virtual machines. And there's unlimited migration capabilities, P to V, between hypervisors or back to physical. And there's very, very broad platform support. We support the whole VMware family in terms of ESX, vSphere, ESXi. We also support Hyper-V. We're Citrix Ready certified, and we have support for Parallels as well. So depending on the hypervisor you have within your environment, we likely have support for it. And by leveraging the VMware APIs, we're also aware of some of the advanced functions of VMware like vMotion, like HA, and like clusters. So we can support all those key capabilities that you may have in your environment, and when a machine actually travels across different hosts, the policies stay with it, so we're very aware of what's happening in that VM. And this provides file-level recovery as well as VM-level recovery, depending on how granular you want to get with your recovery process. The other integration we've done with VMware is the ability to synchronize between vCenter and our own management console. So oftentimes with backup applications, you have a different console, and you have to go locate all your virtual machines and set those up in exactly the right groupings or the right policies that you had within vCenter. What we've done is actually a synchronization, so the same topology you see within vCenter will be exactly what you see within our management console. But our product also allows you to get very granular in terms of the different capabilities you provide or different CPU or memory or storage you provide to those virtual machines. And you can change that through the Acronis console. And what we've done is we've done a reverse synchronization back into vCenter as well. So the changes you make in the Acronis management console show up in the vCenter console as well. So there's synchronization going both ways. And lastly, we came out with this feature called Instant Recovery about 9 months ago. And this feature was driven by our customers who said, in virtualized infrastructure, we have a lot higher need for a shorter recovery time objective than we had in physical infrastructure. So what we've done with this feature called Instant Recovery is as you're backing up your data to whatever your location you're backing up to, we actually keep a virtual machine of that data available. And if you want to recover the virtual machine, you literally just turn the virtual machine on. So it's waiting there for you. And depending on when you want to recover, you're not recovering all the data over the network. You're literally turning the virtual machine on. And one of the solutions we have that I'll talk about in a little bit in our booth today is a demo with a cloud-based partner where we're leveraging this feature. Our online product is called Acronis Backup and Recovery 10 Online. And we just released this product, announced it last week. This product allows for not only file, but also image-based backups to the cloud. And it's a secure turnkey cloud, so we've contracted with a third-party hosting company. We've got the resources on the back end. And you as a customer contract with Acronis for the amount of storage you'd like, and we provide that cloud environment to you as a turnkey solution. You don't need to go and stitch this solution from different vendors. It's very secure, so it uses government-grade encryption, and all of your data is encrypted at rest, over the wire during transmission, as well as on the back end. And if you as a customer lose the encryption key, we don't have that encryption key. It's literally your encryption key from a customer perspective. It's a very cost-effective secondary data center for customers. So as you do your primary backups locally, you can do your secondary backups to this turnkey data center. And really, by having policy-based management, you can use it as a long-term archive because it's very cost-effective if you're using tape or another medium today that's on site. The solution also has universal restore built in. So you can put system images to the cloud, and you can literally recover to any hardware that you have in your environment, not the same hardware you backed up from. So it's very flexible on the recovery side. And as with many online backup solutions or online disaster recovery solutions, you're always beholden to bandwidth and how much you're backing up. So depending on how much bandwidth you have and what those bandwidth speeds are and how much information you have to back up will determine how long that backup and recovery will take. And what we offer to customers is what we call large-scale seeding and large-scale recovery. So if you don't want to wait for your data to back up to the cloud, you can actually send Acronis a physical drive with that data. We'll load it into the data center, and every backup from there on in will just be incrementals. So it'll be a lot faster. We also have the same thing going back. So if you want to do a very quick recovery and you're not willing to wait for your data to be transmitted over the wire, we can actually send you a hard drive of your data that you can load right up very, very quickly. So again, there's flexibility there in terms of your recovery time as well as your backup times. All of these products are completely integrated through one console, through one set of technology that we've developed over a number of years. We also offer partner-based integrations, compatibility, and certifications. So we've done compatibility testing with lots of different disk vendors out there, lots of different tape vendors out there to make sure that your backups are working efficiently. We also have OEM relationships with over 150 partners in the industry, both software vendors and hardware vendors who are leveraging our technology as part of their solution for backup and DR. So we test with them and we certify with them. We've also done certification testing, as I mentioned, with VMware. We're a VMware-ready certified partner. We've also done testing with Citrix and Microsoft on those same statuses. And we've also done certification testing with different operating systems, including the Microsoft stack. And sorry about that. And lastly, we've also done different solutions with partners. So not doing everything organically, but working with partners to deliver more value to customers. And one of the solutions that we're highlighting here today at VMworld is a demo with a partner called iland. And iland is a VMware service provider partner. They actually have a booth here. And what we've done with iland is we've taken Acronis Backup and Recovery 10 Virtual Edition, and we're using iland as a backup target in the cloud. And as a customer backs up the data to the cloud environment with iland, if they need to recover, if they have a site failure, or they need to recover for any reason, they can literally use instant recovery and recover in the cloud. And they do that by turning on those VMs, as we had talked about earlier. So we're leveraging virtualization and the power to unleash a very quick disaster recovery solution in a secondary data center with no upfront hardware investment, no upfront hardware cost. It's a very cost-effective recovery in the cloud type solution that we're demoing here and is for sale, actually, immediately. Just a little bit about Acronis before we end. We're the largest privately held storage management software company in the world. This is as researched by Gartner. Our primary markets are backup and disaster recovery for consumers, for SMBs, as well as enterprises. So we're covering the full spectrum of the different segments of the market that are out there. We were founded about 10 years ago, and we've got a global presence worldwide. In fact, over 50% of our business is outside of the US, and that's driven by our language support, our localization support for all the key regions we're in. Our product is localized in 14 languages. Our go-to-market model is very similar to VMware. We leverage channel partners to reach end customers, and we've got over 15,000 channel partners in the world, probably many of them who you work with on a day-to-day basis. And this is translated into over 80,000 customers for us and over 5 million licenses. So we've sold to thousands of customers worldwide and millions of licenses worldwide of customers using our product. And one of the unique things about our employee population is we've got about a third of our employees within engineering. What that helps us do is translate customer requirements and new technologies that are occurring in the market into product much more faster because we've got a very large population of engineers who can turn around product very, very quickly. And that's helped us to innovate with things like instant recovery and cloud-based disaster recovery. We do get a lot of awards every single year, typically hundreds of awards. This award is very close to the heart for us, as Search Storage Magazine did a customer survey a couple of months ago to thousands of customers to understand what are the leading backup applications that they'd recommend, both in the high-end market as well as the mid-range market. And Commvault won the high-end award, and Acronis won the mid-range award. And this is not only around products and features, but the survey also evaluated things like customer support, vision of the company, completeness of product, and Acronis is very happy to win this award for the mid-range family, which they call the new king of mid-range backup applications. So lastly, from a backup and disaster recovery planning perspective, you should really look for the needs that you have today as well as the needs that you're going to have over the next couple of years and invest in an application that allows you to address those needs. You should not only protect the technologies like virtualization and cloud that are within your IT environment, but leverage these. Leverage these to provide more value to you from a backup and DR perspective than you could without them. They really add a lot of value from a flexibility and recovery perspective. And consider the optimal solution that you can use within your IT environment and how you can use different pieces of functionality from that solution to address specific needs you have. And lastly, invest in a trusted partner and solution. Invest in a partner that's been in business for a number of years and that has thousands of customers that you can go talk to and understand how they're using that product and how that product can be used similarly in your environment. That's all I had today.